Okay. So everyone, welcome. My name is Todd Wohl, and welcome to this March 2024 presentation um, from the Fiduciary Education Forum. For those of you who are familiar or not familiar with the forum, the website is fiduciaryforum.com. And there you will find historic videos of presentations made in the past and other informative documents that some of our guests have been willing to share with everybody. So I'm very pleased to have so many of you participate today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Todd Wohl. I'm one of the partners at our companies, Braun International and Premier Estates International Real Estate. We're headquartered, for those of you who know us, in the Bay Area, in the city, and for those of know of us in Southern California, in Los Angeles, and then we have satellite offices in San Diego, Paso Robles, and we work throughout the country. For some of you who do know us very well, from Honolulu to Maine, Mexico, and the Caribbean markets. And both Braun International and Premier Estates support and sponsor the Fiduciary Education Forum. Braun International does valuations and appraisals of all types of assets, real estate, non-real estate assets. We broker and auction real estate, and Premier Estates does the same purely with residential brokerage and auction. So we are, I think, the only company within the fiduciary organization world, I guess, that brokers and auctions real estate, values it, and we provide fiduciaries with interest-free short-term loans if they need them for an estate for any reason, amongst many other things that we offer. But I want to first introduce, most importantly, our speaker, who I am truly honored was willing to step up to the plate and willing to talk about her experiences. And I have worked and I have to say candidly, the just privilege to work with Jackie Quinn from Quinn Fiduciaries based in Santa Barbara market for, God, I don't even want to know how
Long
long. Maybe
time.
it's for a long, long, long time. And we're always looking for very interesting speakers and topics. And Jackie was, again, as I said, willing to step up and talk about her experience, her mindset, her thoughts about transferring her years and years and years of expertise onto the next generation. So with that, Jackie, I'm going to introduce yourself, and before we get started on the first question, give everybody a kind of a quick overview and why you decided to make this presentation today.
Well, Todd and I have talked often through my process of me attempting to sell the company. And what I found was really lacking was any kind of assistance to us fiduciaries on, how to build a practice and then how to sell it. Often all that people really talked about was sort of either they just faded away when they were done, or they sold it kind of piecemeal by client to client. And to me, it's a business like any other business. And I always felt that it should be sold that way. And I was fortunate enough to have people who supported that vision for me, but I just feel that's not talked about enough. And so I was happy to do this presentation, and happy that Todd asked me to do so.
Well, okay. Well, thank you, Jackie. And Jackie, why don't you give everybody a quick overview of your experience, how you became a fiduciary, um, and kind of your role in your company, what you did, what kind of estate and trust work you did, if you want to start with that.
Sure. My background, I had been a probate and estate planning paralegal and trust administration, etc. And I was asked in 2008, at the time that fiduciaries were being licensed by a fiduciary who had a home care company, to come on board and build up the fiduciary practice. So I did. I'm number 192. I would have been a lower number if I could have got my boss to get her shit together, so to speak, sooner. But anyway, so that was 2008. And if any of you were around then, that's about the worst time on earth to have become a fiduciary. Suddenly, everyone had no kind of value. Any of your clients, they not only lost value in their housing, but they lost value in the stock market. So it was a really kind of crazy time to come into the profession. Anyway, she had, as I said, a home care company, and then it was her and I were the two fiduciaries. And sadly, she passed away in 2015. And so I took that opportunity to separate myself from that company. And truly, they just weren't interested. They didn't really understand the fiduciary work. And I started Quinn Fiduciary Services with one employee.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And for all of you who are paying attention, we have shared our screen with the questions we're going to try to talk about today. So Jackie, let's go jump to number two. What were the reasons you decided to move on to the next chapter? I mean, pretty pretty basic
Besides the
question, I guess.
obvious, besides the
Yeah.
obvious, well, I'm 71 and I've been doing this for 15 years, and any of you who have been doing it know what a rough, tough job it can be. And honestly, I wanted to travel and enjoy life. None of us know how long we have. And I wanted to travel while I could still get around
Okay,
easily.
thank
So
you.
that was my main thing.
Me either.
Oh,
Got
some,
it.
someone's talking.
Okay. I think I got them. Um, so how did you establish discussion with your associates? Well, I guess before we go to three, what was your approach to trying to find potential buyers? What did you decide to do? I know you and I've talked about it and gone through it,
Mm.
but tell our viewers what was the first step that you went through?
Well, I'm just going to say, first of all, when everyone tells you it takes at least 4 years to sell a business, it's true. So I um, I had the business valuated. I was working with a business consultant pretty much from like my second year as a fiduciary. And the main reason I did that is you're so busy working hard and building your company that you truly don't have time to like make sure you're going in the right direction. I was adding employees, and that's a very frightening thing when you're getting started, because all you can see is money going out the door, and that sort of thing. And so I originally approached two of my fiduciaries who were on staff and at the time. And one of them was in her 60s and she just didn't want to make that kind of commitment. And then I have to say the other one, he just didn't quite want to pay what I thought it was worth. And it turns out he's not even a fiduciary anymore at this point. So I think it was the right move that I just said no. And so after that, I approached people. People approached me in town because they heard of it. I had a small boutique trust company that was interested. Um, I had a national home care company who was interested. I had people, I think I went through maybe 8 to 10 prospective buyers, and for whatever reason, things never seemed to work out. until I hired the right people who were smart enough um, to go on this journey with me. And two of them are on the presentation. So I think they're getting notes on what to do when they get out. So, but that's what it is.
So,
And I had it evaluated, and it was evaluated also by the Small Business Association.
so I'm just going to come in real quick.
Mhm.
So, on the valuation side, we have, and we did not do it for Jackie by, I guess, really, in writing. Jackie and I talked about it, but we have, in the course of time, helped a few other fiduciaries go through the evaluation methodology of, appraising a business. And we do that as a company, and that in itself is almost another presentation that's too much for us to talk about today. But valuing service line business, there is a process of doing it. There are cons of doing it. Jack and I spoke about it. Pro is it gives you a sense of understanding. The con is it's a number that is now written in paper, and you believe that that's what your business is worth. And for all of you who are in transact real estate, transact any other kind of asset, candidly, it's what the buyers are willing to pay, not what an appraiser says it's worth, not what the seller says it's worth. It's what, or you say it's worth. It's what the market's willing to bear. So valuing a fiduciary practice is a step, and I think a a good step. It's how you do it and what you do. These are different questions we can answer another time. So I guess to that point, Jackie, you kind of alluded to this, but number 4, how did you establish a sale price?
So we did come up with, the traditional, it was 1% basically of quote unquote sales. But then because I was selling it to staff, and in other situations, I discounted it. And again, to your point, Todd, anyone can come up with a valuation, but what is someone willing to pay? So
Right.
I think we came to a point or a price that we all felt was fair. So
So,
it was discounted from its actual value.
okay, so fair enough. Just going back, because I think you and I had talked about it, and I think you mentioned it, the SBA, Small
Yes.
Business Administration,
Mhm.
did say to you that they would provide funding for, am I
Correct.
correct? Okay.
Yes, I had a couple of different scenarios of different buyers who were going to go that route. And the SBA was always saying my numbers were very strong. And when things didn't work, it wasn't the value of the company, it was the buyers at the time.
So just to that point, um, the SBA, for those of you who aren't familiar, the SBA does all types of real estate, operating business, uh, um, loans, and certain types of banks have SBA programs, and those SBA programs are credentialed by that bank. So those of you who know us know we do a lot of work in the banking world, in the bank world, I should say. And the SBA and that partner bank are both, as I like to say, on the hook for that loan. So if a loan goes bad, it's not just the SBA, it is also the bank that writes the loan. So it is twofold. But the SBA, and surprised to Jackie when she told me this, I was surprised that the SBA would finance this type of business. Um, but I just wanted you to know all that there are options out there. Um, so, Jackie, in this next question, something you and I talked about, which is what were existing fiduciaries interested in merging with you? If not, why not?
I would say no. So there's, I think for a couple of reasons. There's very few, at least that I found or that you also knew of, Todd, who had a practice that had more than one or two fiduciaries. And the fiduciaries from out of town, I think, were reluctant to expand to Santa Barbara. So, depending on where your practice is located, I just felt there was a hesitation always of them wanting to do that commitment. And I'll touch on something that I was going to talk about later on. It's also it's a big risk for whoever buys an existing company. There's the fear that it's closely associated with the fiduciary, in this case me, and that is something to consider. So I don't know if I answered
Yeah.
that.
And especially because of locale and the nature of your business, which is very much hands-on. If you're geographically in another market, which like you and I both, and I thought might be a great
Yeah,
idea for certain fiduciaries, and still believe to this day that it has merit. And some fiduciary practices that I know very well or work with, they are branching out geographically. But to your
yeah,
point, it does take a management, you know, it's managing people,
right. It's a
right?
big commitment to take over a practice, I would think, in another town where
Yes.
you don't necessarily have all the connections, that I have or that my buyers have. So you're coming in cold, and Santa Barbara's an interesting, different market. So, you know.
Yes. Well, yeah, absolutely. So, the next question, what were your biggest concerns selling your practice?
Well,
If you could.
obviously, I think for any of us is, you want to be sure your clients are going to be well taken care of. If you've been in this any length of time, you've built up a reputation, you've helped many people. You want to, you're concerned about that. And another concern was I wanted to be paid what I felt was a fair price for all the hard work I had done for all those years. So,
Mhm. And rightful concerns. And so I guess the next question would be, what were the buyer's concerns purchasing your business?
well, as I alluded to, the business is me and it's Quinn Fiduciary Services. And so I think with almost all the prospective buyers, there was a fear that if Quinn wasn't there anymore, Jackie Quinn, would the clients remain? And so I, for the last 2 to 3 years, stepped back quite a bit. And that reason was twofold. One, I think I would have had a stroke if I had stayed working as hard as I was. But the second was I wanted whoever was going to buy it to see that the business functioned without me. And it did. I originally started taking Fridays off, then I took Thursdays and Fridays off. The last year I traveled a lot and, with great comfort, knowing that my staff was handling things and they did. And so, I mean, they can speak to that themselves, but I think that gave them some comfort in knowing that, yeah, while it was my company and I was strongly associated with it, people in the community were getting to know them as well and understand that if I trained them, they were good and they weren't just some fly-by-night people coming in.
And we'll talk about a term for all of you in the business world, understand the word earn out. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Um, okay, and when we segue into the next question, um, well, we talked about what their concerns were, right? We've talked about what
Mhm.
your concerns were. So now that you, let's call it, got over that mental hurdle, negotiating hurdle, how did you negotiate the sale terms? Was it with lawyers? Was it one-on-one?
Right.
Um,
It
talk to
was,
everybody
it
about
was
that.
a, yeah, it was a hybrid, I would say. Initially, I felt it was important that we kind of reach an agreement on what the terms were, or like, what did I want? What did they want? How did we meet in the middle? And then you bring in the attorneys. We each had attorneys, we each had CPAs. It's kind of no different than in the fiduciary practice. You don't do it alone. It's teamwork. When you sell a house, it's just not you and the realtor. You're talking with the CPA, you're talking with the financial advisor. And so, we sort of agreed amongst ourselves about what the terms would be, but then we let the professionals come in to make sure none of us were stabbing ourselves in the foot, and doing it properly.
I have to say, I thought that was a very smart approach. Didn't put the negotiations per se in the terms of the attorney in the hands of the attorney. A, of course, that can be very costly, but B, you're also negotiating now not with your buyer, you're negotiating with an attorney. So the other side gets an attorney, means you feel like you have to get an attorney, and the attorneys are negotiating, the attorneys are talking. And the reality is, this is a very, you're not selling a $400 million company. Jackie rightfully said, you're selling relationships, you're selling people. And that is one-on-one. I think your approach is very, very, very smart, and I think valuable for you and for buyer, right? Because that gives a sense of trust. I could talk about valuation and trust and how they're interrelated. I will say that in the end, of course, you need somebody to document the transaction, and that's what.
Oh, I think we just lost you. Is that anybody else hearing Todd? We just lost Todd. Huh. Well, let's see.
Awesome. Okay, there we
Yeah.
go.
Are you back?
We there? I am
Yes.
back. I'm sorry. I've got hold on. Unmute. Sorry. I have got a bad connection. Okay.
Yeah, you were
You
getting
see
a
me,
little
Jackie?
wobbly. Yes.
I know, I see this. Put the screen up again. Just happen to have a bad internet is internet. Okay. My apologies. Okay. Next question. Well, we talked about that. How did you transition to the buyers? And let's start with that part of the question first.
Mhm. Well, we're still basically transitioning. I agreed to stay on for up to a year. I don't think they'll probably need me that long, and I have a consulting agreement with them, and I'm working up to 30 hours a month. That seems to be working out so far. As you all can imagine, some cases are easier than others to get out of and extricate yourself from. There's a couple that I will probably stay on. I have a client who was basically my first client, and she's 92, and I promised her I would stay on. Although having said that, I don't do most of the work anymore. Uh, one of my owners, Tamara, does, and I'm just there to be the signer, and I help with the big decisions. There's another case where it's very complicated, and if I leave it, it'll just kind of blow up. And what I tried to do is I tried to have us name. Have we lost Todd again? I don't
No,
know.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, I'll just keep talking.
You keep
So,
talking.
what I tried to do in all of our documents, because of the way, as you all know, we can't just name a company, we are named individually. early on, as I saw that I was growing, I tried to have language in all the documents, at least the ones that I was aware I was being named, where I always worked as a co-fiduciary with another fiduciary, but that either could act alone. And then initially I would name the third fiduciary, say that that was our backup. But then as we grew and some people left, I broadened that language to say that we could name another professional fiduciary from Quinn Fiduciary Services, or in some instances, the attorney could name it. So that's kind of a built-in succession plan that doesn't cause a lot of grief. Now, obviously, court cases are more complicated. And we have our first one coming up, I think, in like a couple weeks. I don't anticipate any problems, but we're fortunate in Santa Barbara in South County. We have one judge. She's wonderful. She very much appreciates what fiduciaries do. She has always appreciated me, and she appreciates that the people who have taken over were my former staff. So I truly don't anticipate any problems with that, but it does take a little bit more time.
So I guess part of the next question of the same question is, the second part of it is, did the court provide any roadblocks? I guess you answered that.
Yeah, not yet. And I really don't anticipate any, but you never know. But I think especially the court cases that we've had, I've been on them for so long and they're sort of at that maintenance level. All the nasty, icky stuff is done. And so I think the court would rather keep it with the same team rather than, rock the boat. And I just in all of those situations, I don't foresee any problems.
Mm.
But
Because I know that's a common question
right.
for for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So what sale terms were important to you? If you want to talk about that through and I guess I think I'd like to ask it this way, Jackie. What
Sure.
sale terms were important to you at the beginning when you decided to sell your practice? And then what sale terms were important when you got to the final decision of working with some of your um, former associates and experts that worked in your company? We'll start with that. If
Mhm.
if there is a difference.
Um, in my perfect world, I would have got the money right up front and I would have just said goodbye. But it didn't work that way, but I am also very comfortable with the way it ultimately is working out. I had I think that and that so the sales price was one, and we did agree on the price. It was more about how I was paid, and we have worked that out. And then I guess my other kind of big concern for myself was the accounts receivable. And I was just that was something super important to me because, again, as fiduciaries, especially on court cases, we're not often paid right away or we're paid uh, periodic payments. So you can have a sizable accounts receivable. So that was kind of something very important to me besides figuring out the ultimate sales price and then how I would be paid.
Mm.
I
So
answered.
this is where I want to just kind of interject about the term earn out.
Mhm.
And Jackie, I don't remember if we really talked about this at one point when over the year or two or three, whatever it was, time goes by. Um, but with a business like this, and candidly, with law firm practices, accounting firm practices, there are a lot of professional practices that there's goodwill, which can walk out the door every day.
Mhm.
B, as Jackie said, there's the AR, and the AR is an important component to income to the buyer. And then, of course, with an earnout, payment to the seller. And an earnout is a very fair and reasonable approach to a sale like in a fiduciary practice. And what an earnout is sure, everybody would like to get their money up front. The seller wants to get all their money up front. The buyers may not have it. They may feel, let's say, queasy about long-term impact for the named person to leave. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But so the earnout is a fair way, a very fair way for the buyer and seller to meet in the middle. And that means that there'll be some upfront money, but then over time, the buyer will pay the seller based on the income, collecting the accounts receivable, the AR, new business as it comes in, business that may be promised, potential business, however you want to define it. And that business will then support the earnout to the seller. So that earnout could be a period of 1, 2, 3 years. If any of you read the Journal, the Wall Street Journal, you'll see it all the time about, buying, selling private companies. Earnouts are a common approach for this. So when you think about an earnout, you do think about fairness to the buyer, fairness to the seller, and it's based upon performance. So the seller's got to feel comfortable that the buyer's going to do their job and be able to continue the business and pay the seller through future earnings. Right, Jackie?
Right. And I didn't do it that way for a couple of reasons. I treated this strictly as this was a business. I sold it. I got a down payment. We have a note that's figured out. And part of the reason I wanted to keep it, I just wanted to keep it simple. If you start, oh, it's going to be based on profit or based on this, then you have a whole host of other things of who determines what that profit is.
Correct.
To me, I just could see problems, and not from my buyers per se, period. I see that as a problem. And to me, I also let's just keep it simple. I think we worked out something that was fair and agreeable to all of us. We have it's basically a note for a set number of years. Um, the monthly payment isn't an equal to the actual amount owed, because I didn't want them freaking out that, oh my God, we've got to pay her all this money and we don't even know if we're going to be successful.
Right.
So we came to a price that was agreeable to all of us, and then they'll do a catch-up payment every year per se. Of course, they're always welcome to pay me more, but that was it. And then also I have an incentive, established an incentive if they pay the note off early. So those to me were things that I felt were fair and equitable for all of us, and not just me, not just them, because obviously I want them to succeed. That's not only in my best interest, but again, this was my company and I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, and I want it to continue. And I want them to not just be working because they've got to pay me. You know what I mean?
Well, look, I have to tell you, I did not know all the terms. You and I spoke, kind of topically on certain subjects and got into the weeds in others, but I didn't know the terms. And I have to say, I think that was a very smart approach, the structure of the deal for both you and for the buyers. Very fair, very reasonable. Um, it, it covers all the bases that were important to you. It does take on a feeling like an earnout, and that term can take on different sets of circumstances, financial circumstances, um, milestone circumstances. But in the end, it worked for you. So I think for everybody on this presentation today, what you're really hearing is there's a lot of strategy and structure that has to be put into this. And it does take thought and it does take time. And I think, you know, from, selling any kind of business, I don't care how big or small it does take a lot of time. And, when I would say this, we are not as a company business brokers. We get involved selling businesses through different platforms of ours. But I would say that candidly, you're going to need a year. We haven't really talked about it, and I think that's very conservative. If one was thinking now, I'm thinking about selling, well, it's not going to happen in 6, 7 weeks. It could take, and Jackie went through, a lot of iterations of it and a lot of soul searching and a lot of consideration. And I don't remember how long it took you, but I would say from my perspective and what we see in our business, a year is very reasonable, and it could take longer.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, because speaking of many different iterations, I had several different scenarios. So it was 4 years from the time I first said I wanted to sell it till I actually sold it. And then with my buyers, it was less than a year, but I want to say it was maybe close to 8 months, 9 months. And of course, I wanted it done in a week, but it doesn't happen like that. And again, it's a huge purchase, and I could certainly understand, the buyer's concerns because it's a massive responsibility you're taking on. But again, you have to have the conviction that it's worth it, you know.
Well, yeah, and again, that's part of the reason you're doing this for yourself, this presentation, um, which I can't thank you enough for. Um, but it is, you build something and you do want it to be carried on, and you want it to be carried on with people that you feel good and you trust and you have comfort with. And for most of you, that's going to be an important consideration. Um, but listen, candidly, depending on where your fiduciary practice is, situations that Jackie has had to deal with because she's in what I would consider a tiny fiduciary market, versus somebody that might be in, a client of ours who's considering doing this in the Bay Area, in San Francisco. Their market is, exponentially larger. Southern California, even San Diego. There's tangent markets that work well with that, and candidly may either increase your buyer pool or decrease your buyer pool. I mean, I would say this. I know we're getting on to the next question, but it's just in my mind, is that from an optics standpoint, the logic would be for who is the best buyer, right? The thought would be it would come from within. And what I mean by that is from within your existing people in your practice, in your business. That would be a smart consideration. Now, if it's not a consideration, there are, again, other fiduciaries, conservatorships, guardians. There may very well be a private business practice, such as a wealth manager, a business manager in some form, and that in itself takes on different definitions, but that may want a fiduciary practice as an additional arm. If you look at a trust company, the trust companies, they do many, many things, right? They do everything. In most cases, a fiduciary with the exception of the person, does not, right? Because a trust company can manage the real estate, can manage the cash, stocks, bonds, right? They can manage a closely held business. They can take care of the individual. Um, you know, they're structured that way and they earn fees that way. So a fiduciary's business, a conservator's business isn't that way. So you think about who your buyer pool is, and then how you get to those potential buyers. That is a conversation of strategy, and who you know that can help make introductions. I think, would you agree to that, Jackie?
Yeah, and I have to say that's one thing that is good about the PFAC organization, and the fact that you end up meeting a lot of different people, like Todd. I had some other folks who were trying to help me in other fields. And they all had great ideas, and I think what it came down to for me is that I truly felt it needed to be fiduciaries. I explored a couple of the other options, and what we do is so unique that it's hard to explain it to people outside of our
Yes.
world. Even though they maybe sort of work with us, they don't really understand the process. Like, oh, you don't get paid right away on some things, huh? Or what I call the shelf client, where they come in, you interview each other, you sign up, but then they don't need you for 10 to 15 years. What's the valuation of that? And so
Mm,
anyone who wasn't a fiduciary, I just felt it was too big of a hurdle to get past for them to truly understand what they were buying. And the fear I had is that because they wouldn't understand it, they would not be successful. So that's when I started coming back to the idea it really had to be fiduciaries. And I joke that I had to wait till I hired my buyers, but that when I was interviewing them, it was always with the mind of like, maybe they would be good for this. So, it was always in the back of my mind for the last 4 years of, how I would proceed. Um, and what I haven't talked about is I'm a or was a sole proprietor. Um, I think that ideally starting out, when I started, I never intended to grow like I did. I thought I'd be a one person fiduciary with an assistant. But as time went on, that's not what happened. And I would probably structure things differently, as my buyers were smart enough to do, and be an LLC so that you could potentially bring employees in as you train them and then maybe sell them a partnership interest in the LLC. There's a whole lot of ways you can go about this, but I think it's important as fiduciaries, even if you're brand new, not brand new, that you're always thinking about, you're not going to want to do this forever. So to always be reflecting and thinking about how you can successfully do it, hopefully without the torture I kind of went through,
yeah.
to be honest.
So, a next question, how long did you agree or agree in, let's say, in writing versus conversation, now that time has gone on, to stay on during the transition? Was there a
So yeah,
timeline?
there's a time, but as in everything, if we find, I think that so I agreed to stay up to a year. As again, just working up to 30 hours a month. And it's my hope that after that year, we sort of will have either I'm off of the cases that I need to get off of. They certainly know what they're doing and will be comfortable that they know what they're doing. But I will always be available for phone calls, or after a year, if we're like, oh, maybe we should re-up it, we can re-up it. I mean, I think we've all communicated well with each other. Again, my goal is for them to be successful, not just because I want them to pay me, but I want them to be successful. So I don't have that, and I think they feel the same. It's not set in stone, although it is set in an agreement for up to a year.
Okay. Next question. What type of indemnifications did you provide? Or did they provide?
Well,
What
we
was the
just
conversation?
basically, yeah, we just basically, standard boilerplate legal ease indemnified each other. So,
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Um, that's when, for all of you who are listening, that's when you need to hire an attorney.
right.
And I will tell you, um, having dealt with numerous fiduciaries and helping them with this situation, or at least in one case evaluation, you cannot finally negotiate a transaction without an attorney. Either the
Right.
seller can't, the buyer can't. You need legalese and protections.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just,
it's money well spent. It really is.
yes, thank you for saying that. It is
It's hard
money
to
well
pay it,
spent.
but it's money well spent.
It is money well spent. And there are lawyers who we had one speak many, many months ago, um, who are M&A lawyers, transactors. Um, you know, sometimes for an M&A lawyer, this is like using an anvil to kill an ant. They're just so overly qualified for this type of transaction, but you do need an attorney, and I'll candidly, for both sides, you need one that has good business logic,
Mhm.
business experience from a practical standpoint. You can't hire somebody who is a lawyer who's right out of the book and everything's by the book. This is very personal,
Right.
and there has to be some thought into this. And, you know, again, this is almost a whole nother presentation, is how do you hire a lawyer? Well, that's an interview process, but you need a lawyer that's got good business acumen. And candidly, a lot of lawyers are great lawyers, but they're not there to give you a business opinion. They're there to protect you. So
Right.
it's a balance, right, Jackie?
Yeah, and again, what we do is so unusual that
Yes.
you may have to educate the attorney so they understand what you do, because they may think that some of your requests or requirements are crazy unless they understand the business.
So, next question. What advice would you give to fiduciaries wanting to sell their business? What
Well,
comes to mind?
yeah, I've kind of alluded to it as well. Is I don't care how new or long you've been in the business, you should start thinking about it already. Um, and then again, I would suggest that you structure your company a little bit differently than I did. So that either you can sell shares and however it is, so that it doesn't become this big nut to crack like it was for me. That would be my advice. But also just do realize this is a business you're selling. It's not just oh, we got some clients and you get this one and I'll take this one. No, you're selling a business. So, treat it that way, be smart about it. Again, surround yourself with good people. As I said, I had a business consultant. Then I had, a good attorney, a good CPAs. If you're thinking that you want to do this, try to find the way, and I hate this term, but find the win-win so that everybody feels good about it. Um, that would be my recommendation. I do see that Paul asked a question. I don't know if you want me to answer those yet.
Not yet. I
Okay.
want to I want to just add something about the win-win.
Mhm.
I think that's a very important point that everybody who's listening has to think about a transaction. It may not be 100%, you know, in any transaction has to be a win-win. Depending on what you're selling, sometimes it's biased to the seller. But in this case, it has to be really win-win or equally equally based. For all these reasons, it really does. And then you walk away feeling like it's going well, because in an earnout, or as Jackie's approach, you're still working together. So that working together has to be in a way that you're feeling good about each other. That's really important. And then again, it affects your clients. So there was a question by a fiduciary who asked, can you talk a little bit about, Jackie, about AB 1859 regarding professional fiduciary corporations that was introduced in 2014? I'm not aware of the status of the bill. Jackie, are you aware of AB 1859 at all?
I'm not really good at what's the number of something, but if it's the one that just recently was circling around on our PFAC listserv, it's so that we can be named, we can name in the documents the corporate name of the company versus naming us individually. I think it would be fantastic if that is the question. Then it wouldn't be such a trial to try to sell your company. And now we're having to go through, you can only imagine how, after all these years, how many documents I'm named in that now we have to go through the headache of getting me off of. So I would hope that at some point the Bureau appreciates that we're not all just fly-by-night people and we're serious business people, and to be treated that way. But I may not be answering the right question. So if I'm not, I apologize.
Okay. One of the other questions that came in was standard business value. How does this number compare to other professional practices, such as a real estate or attorney or accountancy practice? I'm gonna start with the question that was part of that question. You cannot generalize a law firm versus a CPA firm. They have similar components to them, but there are differences that would dramatically affect what a buyer is willing to pay. I will tell you, because again, we're in the valuation business, that law firms and CPA firms do not sell. They merge. They merge because the goodwill walks out the door every single day. CPA firm's a little different than a law firm. A law firm, out goes the lawyer. I mean, we probably work with, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, 1,000 lawyers, probably the top, no, not even the top. We probably work with 300 law firms, so it's even more lawyers than that. We probably work with 300 law firms throughout the country. And the minute that attorney who walks out that firm takes his clients, and he takes 100% of his clients when he goes to Jones, Jones, and Jones, and then he goes to Jones, Bloom, and Jones. Off he takes his clients. So for the question, how does it compare? You really can't make that comparison to a real estate or an attorney or accountancy practice. There's differences. And the fiduciary business is actually quite sticky in comparison to those types of business. So when you look at a value, the value, and there are metrics, and this is a completely different presentation we would have to have, and we're running out of time, but there are methodologies that we use as appraisers, as valuers, to look at data points with certain service industries to come up with a value. Again, it's one company's or person's opinion of the value of that business. And the metrics that are used can vary. So that does, again, create those holes, as I said at the beginning, as to that value that you're looking for and you're trying to at least peg and put in a box. An appraiser or evaluation firm can help you do that, but you cannot use that as the God's appraiser said my company is worth $10 million, so I'm going to $1 million. I mean, it's some same thing. The house the appraiser said is worth $1.2 million, and buyers $1.5 million, or they're only offering $1 million. It's just an opinion. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just an opinion.
Right.
So, to that question, it's very difficult. Second part of that question was how many fiduciary practices are sold each year? I don't have that knowledge. Jackie, do you have any insight to that?
Nope.
Yeah,
No.
no, there wouldn't be that data. Candidly, God, if I don't know, if I don't know them, if I don't know about them, I doubt they've occurred. I don't want to sound like I'm in the complete no, but
Right.
I wouldn't think many. And I think actually there are a lot of fiduciaries that don't believe that their business is saleable.
Right. And
And
that's honestly the one of the main reasons I wanted to do this presentation, because to me, that's crazy. You're not treating
agreed.
this like a business, and it's a business. It's a business that you've worked really hard to establish. And why should it just disappear because you've disappeared? It just makes no sense to me. And another thing I see Paul's asking a follow-up. So I used to work in law offices. Most law offices have managing committees. They have partnership agreements. So they determine what that is early on, and that's something they work out. It's very typically different than the way we do things.
Yes, absolutely. Um, okay, we're just everybody's in chat questions. Um, Jackie, is there anything you want to end on? Anything that's coming to mind that we haven't talked about? You got about a minute to summarize with?
Well, I can see already we need to do another presentation, and we should do it with my buyers since they're on this
Oh,
group. And I think that would be good to hear it from their end of things of, what were their fears besides the money and me leaving, what I think that might be a whole other presentation. To have their take. But again, and I keep reiterating it, we've all worked really hard to establish our companies, and there's no reason we shouldn't get the value for it. Now, having said that earlier, and the value was 1% of quote unquote sales, that doesn't mean that's what you get. You get what's a reasonable amount of money. Okay, that's how I look at it.
I'm just going to chime
Mhm.
to that. I would say that on the valuation side or on the SBA side, the
Uh-huh.
SBA will go through their own valuation
Right.
analysis based upon profits, years in business,
Right.
revenues, EBITDA, net operating income. There's a lot of metrics that they use.
Yeah.
And if the SBA is willing to loan on a fiduciary practice, that should give you all a very good sense and comfort. I think that you know that because now you're talking about government lending institution with a private lending institution or public lending institution, meaning a bank that is willing to underwrite this.
Right.
So I think that's something to keep in mind. So I'm going to say to all of you, our next fiduciary forum presentation is going to be at the end of April. We've got a trust company speaking and uh, and how they interact with fiduciaries. I'm excited about that, and I'm so thankful to Jackie for taking to being in front of everybody and talking about what is a very private a private situation. And I'm honored that she confided in me and her buyers confided in me in some way. And I really am honored, but I'm honored that you were willing to be a part of this, and even more so willing to have them on another presentation. I will, I may take you up on that. We'll talk to them. But for everybody, have a great week. This is recorded. This will be on the fiduciaryforum.com website at some point later in the week or so you can watch it again if you'd like. Any questions, you can reach out to Jackie Quinn directly, or if you have questions for us, we're happy to help. And thank you, everybody. And Jackie, thank you sincerely for doing this. So everyone, be well. Thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing you next month at our next Fiduciary Education Forum presentation. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.